We got Jay. Look, Real Street in the background. How you doing, Jay?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Well, here's the deal. I know there's going to be a few questions and complaints and stuff in the comments here. I want you to completely ignore it because they're going to say stuff about not being able to hear me that well.
Okay.
Facebook auto corrects the volume when a guest comes on. So sometimes it becomes a little hard to hear me. Not for you, but for everybody else. So just run with it. It is what it is. See, they're saying can barely hear me. That's how it works. I went out and spent all this money on a nice high-dollar microphone, everything, tried to get set up, be more professional, and I think we have to go back to headphones like you got. But anyways,
Right on.
Jay, how you doing, brother?
I'm all right. Just I had a bit of a blender for an afternoon. I was doing some stuff on the dyno, and then I had to run out to my youngest brother's birthday, and then just came back to the shop to do this with you.
Awesome, yeah, and it's probably been a crazy week because I know last week was Texas 2K. I saw you in a bunch of pictures out there, and then it's also just racing season anyway. So a lot of folks are, getting work done, jumping in there, everything else. You know what I mean? Now is just the time of the year for it.
Yeah, for sure. The kind of get it while the weather's good, because once the summer comes, we have to fight for air. So
right, and that's a big deal, and that's part of the reason why like I've been a fan of yours personally for so long is that I see that, you've been working with these two JZs, with the inline six motors, with kind of everything import related, but just making amazing power and running the numbers that you guys are running. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
It's, man, today I was on the dyno with a really nice 440-inch LS base deal, and it broke a rocker. And we caught it in time. It picked up a noise and pulled the valve cover off, and I'm looking at this rocker, and it's really, even still owning a pushrod engine myself, it's really hard to want that pain again in my life compared to the Japanese stuff. The architecture and the engineering is pretty nice on the Japanese stuff.
Now, how long have you been involved? I mean, I remember hearing your name and seeing your name, especially with Supras. How long have you been involved in the automotive industry, and then specifically in imports, the performance work?
Well, when I was a kid, I started working on a Mustang that I owned, and then that transformed into a job that I held from about 16 or 17 to around 27 years old. And that's kind of like about the time that Real Street started.
And it's crazy because, and you were just talking about an LS, I believe, and I can't remember what the video was, but I'm going to ask you about this one, something way back that just popped in my head. You went overseas to build off an LS engine.
Yep.
For those folks that don't know what I'm talking about, there was a video, and I apologize because I forget who did it, and it was part of some competition. You guys went over. What country did you go to?
We went to Dubai.
To Dubai. So Dubai, and they were having some kind of expo or some kind of show, and you came over there and had a team together. Who was on your team?
Well, it's for SEMA, the same SEMA we have here in Vegas, just SEMA Middle East.
That's what
and
it was.
A friend of mine that I've used to race Mustangs with, Jason Hoots, he went over there with me, and my partner Gio came with us also, and then the guys from TRC, that racing channel.
Yep.
Yeah, they came along too, and that was pretty cool because I had only built a handful of LS engines before that, and just to be that far away from your norm, it was pretty cool. Yeah.
Well, and I think if I remember in the video correctly, like there was only like one set of tools for the two teams, like everything on the LS engine is the same bolt sizes, so you ended up having issues waiting on sockets.
Yeah, you're waiting out a wrench, or we had to notch the block, or just nonsense. But the lessons learned in that experience were pretty big because there you are, halfway across the world, and it's literally again the same set of jokes, the same set of the same fuckery, just car guys having a good time doing car guy things. So even though you could maybe you don't speak the language, the community amongst car people is pretty strong.
Well, and and that's the same thing to be said about, we talk about that in racing and everything. And, a lot of my friends are very, very much into street racing and such. And when you go to a race, you don't see color. It's just a multicultural, everybody blends
car
into
people.
Yeah, it's just car people.
Yeah.
It's not even anything anymore. So it's crazy to see because they've got. Did they show you any of the wild stuff that they like? They do some crazy shit in Dubai.
Dude, it is wild. I mean, that to walk around that place, it's a it's a it's the part of your adult mind that still is a child, and there's this playground there.
Yeah.
And it's just the scale of the place and the architecture. A lot of the stuff you have to really look at and try to process, because I'm sure the conversation was like, this is what we want to build. And the architects were like, yeah, you can't do that. And they were like, no, you don't understand.
Right.
This is what we want to build.
This is what we're doing
and
today.
Yeah. And it's like, man, I mean, we went up in the Burj Khalifa, the
Right.
tallest building in the world. We went around and did a lot of neat stuff. And just driving out on that Palm Island, you're driving where the ocean used to be. It's a pretty wild experience.
It is. Did you get to do the, how they, and I don't even know what you would call it. It's not drifting, but where like they go up on the two wheels, the side wheels.
Yeah.
I don't even know what they're called.
Yeah, I did that. The guys brought, apparently, the Michael Schumacher of driving on two wheels
Right.
over, and he had a Toyota Land Cruiser, and he popped it up on two wheels, and we cruised around the parking lot on two wheels.
Which is just wild. Like, it's a fucking Land Cruiser. Like,
well, what's wild is, like, on one hand, you're like, well, do I want to go to a hospital in a foreign country if this goes bad? But when the guy rocked this thing up on two wheels, I was in the passenger seat, and I looked in his eyes, and he had complete laser control with no fear. And at that point, I'm like, nah, this guy knows what he's doing. And he literally motored this thing around on two wheels. It was great.
And it was probably executed super smooth, felt very nice.
Oh, it's a little funny to be in something that size and have it rocked up on two wheels. It's not, when you drive a motorcycle up into a wheelie, there's a certain sensation. And I guess because you wheeled your bicycle as a kid, you're ready to process that. But a car on two wheels is a bit different feeling.
That's completely different. And then I think you had mentioned that racing channel. If I'm correct, are they the guys that do the videos now? Excuse me, the videos now for you over at Real Street with the tech tips and everything else?
No, they. I think they share a lot of what we do, but we have an in-house full-time video guy here.
And I think it's awesome because it speaks volumes about your company and what you guys do. I'm very big on, technology and, the modern age and reaching people where they want to be reached. That's why we're doing a Facebook Live podcast. You know what I mean? People want to consume their content differently. But have you seen, I personally see and can understand the effect of how those videos help the community and help folks out that, you know what I mean? That, and sometimes it just may seem like such basic information, but have you seen the effects of doing those videos, firsthand?
Yeah. Yeah. When I was going to the islands to do tuning, I realized that the guys had a lot of heart and a lot of drive, and they just didn't have the direction. So if you made a mistake putting your engine together, maybe you swapped some rod caps around or something, and the engine was destroyed shortly after startup, those guys are out for a year. They can't just swipe their Visa cards and go at it again. And that kind of talking through that with the other guys here, mainly my partner Clay, he said, well, why don't we just start doing some instructional videos? And, you're going to get the guy that says, oh, look at him, he's holding the wrench wrong. And look, man, after 5 times of holding the wrench for a photo, when I'm trying to when we started that project, I had a lot of mechanical work to do every day. So the videos weren't maybe taking priority. Yeah. So, you take some criticism from people at a distance, but I think that as far as the masses go and the amount of people that they really want to do something right, but the only guy that's going to help them needs to empty their checkbook in the process. Those guys need good tech support online.
Well, and I think it's important too because you mentioned tuning, and I'm not a tuner, but I know that these guys are bringing you cars that they built, and then you go to tune them, and it sucks for you guys to find these problems.
Yeah, well, that's today I was on Instagram, and my friend Roman that works over at Boost Logic was like, and the running joke was like another car ready to be tuned, right? And that's a hard position to be put in because maybe the owner is convinced that it is ready to be tuned and that this is the last step before enjoyment. And that's a hard set of expectations to meet when you have, you know, the potential for wiring problems or things put together wrong.
Everything.
You know, just things can go sideways pretty fast.
My question is, I know that, you know, in my opinion, you're one of the smartest guys I know. You know what I mean? I feel you're very well educated. You're very knowledgeable on the subject. How do you feel about the LS junkyard? I'm going to tell you the shit that I do because I ain't got no money. Slap some shit together on a 5.3 block, let it eat. How do you feel about that kind of stuff? Is it enjoyable for you to see that and to see the community doing that and just being able to do something?
I can't tell you how much I approve of that.
No
because,
shit.
Man, like, I'm a Mustang guy. I had Mustangs, and at 500 horsepower, a lot of things break.
Yeah.
And they are all out of reach for the common checkbook. And with an LS, you know, you can maybe put rod bolts in it, maybe not,
right,
and have a good time. And if you don't rattle the thing and you use good octane and don't be too greedy and keep the torque low and just follow the steps, you can have a lot of fun with a junkyard engine. And I think that's incredible. Like, if I had more time in my hands, I would have a G-body with a turbo LS, and I would foot brake it with a bench seat. It would be a riot, you know. Like, I'm game. I just have this other things I got to do that tie up the time.
Speaking of, you got a lot of stuff to tie up the time, and I think it's awesome because some of the videos we see you actually out there physically wrenching. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I may not have the full layout here, but you are owner of the business, wrenching out in the garage, also doing the tuning. Is there anything you don't do?
Yeah, I don't do computers. So I don't own Real Street solely. Since 2009, late 2009, there's been 4 heads of Real Street. So there's the guy that knows the tech stuff, the guy that knows the wrenching, the guy that can screw the cars together and make them run well. That's me. And then my partner, Mark, is kind of like, he's wired with a very banker mentality.
Right.
So he's more of the buyer. And then Gio is kind of just a hustler sales guy. And then Clay is more of the conservative thinker that is kind of the architect of the whole thing. So I don't, I'm not ingrained in the accounting here. You know, Gio's brother and my brother both do the accounting here. Like, there's a lot of moving pieces here. It's not
absolutely.
It's not like, you know, let me put on my cape and go make a car run, then come back in and ship some boxes. This place is way outgrown that mentality.
It's way outgrown that, but the other thing, and I appreciate hearing it because, you know, there's some folks that I look up to in the world, and they will say, take this approach, give 100% of what you're good at. Like, if you're not good at accounting, you shouldn't be back there doing the accounting. Do what you're good at. Find somebody else to do the stuff you're not good at. You know, it's not even worth trying to get better at it.
Yep.
But speaking of Gio, had the car at Texas 2K. How did that go?
And that was really neat. I had, you know, I've always worked hard, and maybe it wasn't always the right approach. Maybe I should have slowed down and thought through the steps a little bit better about where the trench I was digging was leading, per se. You know, but I'm just kind of a worker. And before we went to Texas, I went to the track myself and tested the car. And I was looking at the car, looking at the trailer, and I started thinking about why people even do this stuff. And it's, you know, it's for the feeling of glory, you know, the win, the victory. And I had always done it because I'm just kind of like, I love cars. I mean, cars have always been my first love. But then I thought, we should go to Texas and try to win. So that was kind of the motivation to go to win. You know, like when they offered me to go to Dubai, I was like, yeah, what do I need to do? You know,
sign me up.
It wasn't something that I necessarily went to win. That wasn't my drive. My drive was to have the experience.
Yeah, that was a very cool experience.
To go to Texas, you know, Gio wants to win. He's got the eye of the tiger when it comes to that stuff. So he's in the right position driving the car.
Right.
And we went there, and I was excited to get to race Gary and Easy with the copper car because those two have been a running team of 2JZ racing for a long time. So
and they're good, respectable competition.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can do research on those guys. Like, they're good guys in the community, and it was neat to race them, and I was excited. And I thought, you know, I don't have the hardware that they have, and I'm not trying to make excuses because we walk this line of being able to dual purpose our car to be able to go to drag week. Right. And, you know, Gio wants to be able to drive the thing, the Cars and Coffee. Like, that's one of his deals.
And that's hard because I mean, you're talking about, and I apologize for cutting you off, but the things that you guys are doing, as fast as you guys are going, I mean, I think if I remember correctly, I saw that 200-mile-an-hour time slip. I mean, yeah. And then 6-cylinder car, so you're already down on cylinders. Then on top of that, you guys aren't cementing the blocks and stuff, right? You're not filling the blocks because he wants to go to Cars and Coffee and all of this stuff.
Well, there's more to it than that, though. The cementing the blocks is a conversation on its own. You're putting something that doesn't move inside of something that moves.
Right.
So you're going to find cracks. But, you know, the 200 thing is kind of a joke, and I kind of gave that to him because I run the car hard from about 7/10 till about 5 seconds, and then I'm tapering boost target down and tapering timing out as it goes to the second half of the drag strip, basically.
Right.
And Gio's like, "Can you just leave some boost in?" And I was like, "Yeah, I guess you can go 200." and it really hit 200 on the mark, and I'm like, that clock could have been rounding up because I just, you know, it just takes a little bit more boost for a little bit longer,
right?
You know, to carry the speed. But typically, like, if I'll target right now, say 60 pounds mid-track, by the end of the track, it's 54, 53 pounds.
Gotcha.
Because it doesn't matter as much drag racing. Yeah.
Now, we got some questions in the comments here. It says, was this one billet? Somebody says, first event with the billet wet block. We were talking about the blocks. I saw, is that the one that you guys had posted pictures of, that new billet block? That, I mean, that thing was just beautiful.
It's a nice piece. It's a lot of the, it's basically a copy, more or less, of a stock block in aluminum with an MID style sleeve. So when you pull the sleeves out of the block, it looks kind of like a B series or a K series in the middle of sleeving.
Right.
And that allows me to have direct water contact between the water and the sleeve, because some of the blocks I've seen are jacketed where there's a sleeve, aluminum, and then a water jacket.
Yeah.
And you can do the math on heat transfer through that type of approach. And in order to be able to keep the temperatures under control, which are key in keeping the engine alive, we wanted to have water on the sleeves. So, you know, it looks a lot like a sleeved Honda when you open it up.
Gotcha. And that's something else you work on. We were talking about it earlier. Then we started talking about Mustangs and LS motors. You work on everything. And then there was even some stuff you boggled my mind. Like, and I tell folks all the time when they get like advanced into conversations, I was like, look, guys, you're now above my level of comprehension. Something old. What was the old thing that you were working on? That was like an old tuning system.
Oh man,
I want to say it was like something from the 80s.
I could really throw some jokes out there.
Yeah.
Because some of the new stuff is not much better than the old stuff.
No shit.
I mean, you know, you go back. I think that the first systems I worked on would be like the Ford Epic.
What is that?
It's,
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, it had like 7 channels of data logging, and it logged like water evaporates out of a glass. It was not very good, but it was good for the time.
Right.
And then, you know, there's things like some of the classic Fast and DFI. You know, a lot of that stuff, you know, it evolves without being rebranded. But there are a lot of systems out there that are fairly archaic.
Yeah. Now, what's one of your, I'm not going to say your favorite because, you know, there's different systems for different motor platforms and everything else. What is some of, or, you know, one of your favorite systems to use in a setting?
Man, I could tell you, and it's hard for me to put together in a few words, but once your time has a real value, once you start to really understand how much time you have between today and your last day, and you want to really enjoy that time, I kind of like stopped wanting to work on a lot of other systems, and I just try to stick to the Motec.
Right.
Because Motec has 30 years of building a product that had enough margin to pay a competent staff to engineer a superior outcome. And they have a data system that is phenomenal. and they accompany that with dashes. And I think for a long time, people were pretty ignorant and said that, well, the Motec's so much money. And if you took apart an X275 car just a few years ago, they were using 4 or 5 different boxes of electronics to get this car down the track. And then when you added them up, they weren't saving any money, and their data was scattered.
Right, and it was more complex, trying to pull from 4 or 5 different things at once, and put it all
but
in
it's
one graph.
What we know. It's super hard to convince someone of something other than what they know. That's hard. Like if you're a Mac guy, I may convince you to switch to a Snap-on wrench, but if you are like screaming, for some brand ECU,
right?
It's hard to. And all you can do is kind of like gently lead. You say, hey, does that system ever not give you a data log? And they're like, well, yeah, sometimes it doesn't have a log.
Right.
And then you're like, yeah. Hey, does that system sometimes have this situation where this math doesn't run right in it? Like, yeah, have you seen that? And then you can slowly
lead the horse to water.
Yeah. And somebody had to lead me, man, because, I was told in 2003 or 2004, just start using the Motec, and I had a lot of other systems. I was tuning cars for income, so there were a large handful of systems I was working on, and if that's how you're eating, you have to deal with a certain amount of shortcomings. Right. But when you need an outcome, I think that that really narrows the amount of brands you can select from.
Have you ever seen a Phytech data log? The Phytech
no, but I have. Well, so here's one of my rules. I can talk some smack, but I can't talk smack about something I've never opened.
Oh, yeah. Well,
and
that's what I was gonna say,
when I look at it and I look at the price, I already know the outcome.
You already know what's
happening. I cannot roll through a drive-through of someplace and buy a 99-cent cheeseburger and bitch about the quality of that burger.
This is true.
It's just, you have a hardware cost, you have an engineering cost, you have a supporting staff cost. You've got to maybe market your product. You've got to have someone answering the phone. Like, you probably can't do that for $1,000 ECU and have a great outcome.
No, and you know what? It's a very valid point. You see, this is why I like talking to you, because like I said, you're smart. Like, this is the kind of stuff you think about. But the other flip side too is, like, you had just talked about realizing that, how much time and what your time is valued at and everything else. I think this is a fun fact to share with the world. Up until this point, Facebook wasn't even on your phone.
Facebook was. I took it off a couple years ago because it was the easiest way for me to put 2 hours back in my day. Like,
do you think? Yeah. Do you think that number one, did that work, and then did it trickle effect into more stuff?
Yeah. I mean, like if you watch what we collectively are doing now, we're really married to these phones, and technology, no matter how far you go back in time, technology has always outpaced man. So from the time a man could make a weapon to hurt another man, that's when technology started to outpace us. And you look at what people do with their phones nowadays, and like, you get to a stoplight and you pick up your phone.
Right.
Well, you could get to a stoplight, find a tree that's blown in the wind, and just take a moment to calm down, because people are revved up nowadays, and I'm revved up. I mean, yes. I don't have my natural pace is a high speed with, and I'm missing a tooth, man. So I got to slow down or I'll have misfires.
Like, I'll tell you what, it's crazy. The other day I had a situation where, well, I say it's a situation. My phone died, and I was with my best friend. We were celebrating his birthday. My phone died. I didn't have a phone charger. But that experience for that, like, 4 or 5 hours where I just did nothing.
Oh, man.
I was just with my friend. You know what I mean?
Right.
And we just experienced what we were experiencing. We experienced eating chicken wings and everything else. And,
right.
I'm with it. It sounds kind of crazy because sitting here doing what I do, I constantly am doing, media and social media and involved in all of this stuff. But it is nice to slow it down a bit and really just enjoy it.
You got to ask yourself, when do you have time to think about where this is all headed? When do you have time to think about that problem you're dealing with? When do you have time to think about the best recipe to go faster with your car? And
it's hard to think about it.
Pretty rough
with other thoughts and stuff too. And
yeah. When do you got to put some idle time into your life?
Well, here's the thing. We're coming up on the end of our time here. There's usually a couple questions I ask of everybody. One of the things that I ask a lot of folks is, it seems like, and I feel bad because we didn't even there's still more stuff I want to talk about. I feel like we barely even talked about Supras, and Supras are what led. I feel like a whole generation of people were obsessed with the flame throwing Supras. That was the thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Especially in early 2000s and everything, they were really fast. And there's a guy on here, JJ. He's a buddy of mine from high school. I remember back in high school, he was talking about Supras. Keep in mind,
dude, I could tell you about when I first experienced a Super on the dyno. It was really eye-opening, because had I treated a Mustang engine the way that these guys that were renting this dyno of the place I worked at, they were shaking the shit out of this thing, and it just wouldn't break. And it was making, at the time, 600 or 700 horsepower. And if you did that with a stock Mustang block, it would fall to an idle, not having oil pressure, and the block was split, and your day was over.
And that's it.
So it's a very durable platform for sure.
Is that why you think you do so many of it and stuck with it? Is the durability? Is that what was the shining factor of it all?
Well, originally when I got into business, I was working on Mustangs, but the local competition, they hadn't had a price increase in a decade, so you literally couldn't eat. So then I started working on Subarus, because that was a group of guys that wanted their car fixed, and nobody really wanted to build those engines because they're a little funny. So I built a lot of Subaru engines for a couple of years, and then I owned a Supra at the time, but I really didn't have time to work on it. And then a couple customers brought Supras into the shop, and it kind of just snowballed from there.
And just went on with the wind.
Yeah, it's still hard, man. I haven't found the ceiling. We made a run the other day, and the wastegate solenoid wasn't putting air on the bottom of the gate, so it overboosted. And Gio would have wished it would have just went off the starting line, because he would have ran it with the wastegate plugged and said, "See, I told you it would take it." Right. Because I'm still fairly conservative. It's hard to, you may not believe it because of the time and the speeds that we've achieved, but I'm pretty conservative in the approach, because I don't like breaking stuff.
Well, I think I think a person who took some time to think about it would see that you are conservative in the sense that when you look at it, you don't see a bunch of real street breaking videos. You know what I mean? You don't see stuff breaking.
No,
really bad.
I could walk through maybe, I would say in 10 years, maybe 10 times I made a mistake that caused an engine failure. I know all of them in my head, because I don't want to do that again.
Well, look, I was telling folks today, there was a couple lessons learned. Today we were at a track rental. A gentleman learned a lesson today that I don't think he's going to forget. But what happened is, when I was standing over there talking to this guy, I hear a guy taking a nitrous bottle out, and he didn't relieve the line pressure from the bottle. So he closed the bottle, didn't relieve the line pressure. So I heard it, we heard it pop, we heard it smacking around inside, and I laughed, because I was like, I've done that, but I did that one time. It smacked me literally in the ass, and I never did that again. But then the gentleman, unfortunately, I don't know what happened. They were doing something, and the bottle burst open, or it was open, and then it started doing the spinning and flying around, and everybody was.
That's not cool.
But fortunately, nobody was hurt. Nothing was damaged. Everybody was okay. But that's a life lesson that was learned today as well.
Yeah. Hopefully that guy watches that.
Yeah. Now, a couple more questions. One thing that I always ask too is that we see a lot about what you guys do, and obviously we see you in front of the camera a lot. There's a lot of people, and especially in your business and everything else, and everything you guys do with racing, there is a lot of people involved. Sometimes they don't get the recognition. Is there anybody that you would like to recognize, or folks that have been really helpful or instrumental over the years, or folks you sometimes just see don't get that kind of spotlight?
I would say that my uncle has been good leadership. I grew up without good leadership in my life, so my uncle has been really good leadership the past 5 or 6 years, and helped me start to put down some habits. As far as at Real Street, man, it's the whole team. I mean, I think that probably our shipping guys don't get enough credit. There's Nick, Brandon, Roldo, and his brother. The brothers came as a team, and man, those guys are rock solid here. And
Look,
They don't.
I sell parts online. I understand the shipping department and the woes and
Yeah.
everything else.
Oh man,
So it's
they're grinding. I know. Sometimes I'll walk back there around 5:30, and I'll look at them, and I'm like, yeah, those guys are getting it right now.
yeah, they're just,
So
and especially now it's tax time, so everybody's spending money. So it's like
yeah,
overtime, freak out, everything. Well, look, but
yeah.
before we kick you off and keep moving on to the next guest, is there anything special you want to talk about? Any big plans coming up this year? Anything crazy with the car, with the company, or maybe an event you guys are going to? Something you want us to look out for?
And we're looking out for Drag Week, and I'm going to do Bonneville this year myself personally, which is going to be pretty solid. I may the car that I'm going in has been 250
Oh shit!
on the long course, so I'm building two engines to go out there with, and it's been a lifelong dream for me. So I got to figure out how to get the balls back to hold something wide open that long.
Right.
But I don't know. I'm going to buy a motorcycle or a go-kart or something to get my brain sped up. But I'm really looking forward to that. And then I'm going to go to Drag Week and try to win
You're gonna try
this
to
year,
win.
which will be pretty epic.
Which is dope because Drag Week this year is all Northeast. Like it's
Yeah.
like I'm in Delaware
Yeah.
and it's like Maryland,
Yep.
Virginia, New Jersey. You know what
No,
I mean?
it's going to be in your hood. You're going
It's
to
gonna be
be
in the neighborhood, so I'm gonna
cruising
have to
by.
check it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Right on.
Well, look, brother, I appreciate you coming on tonight and talking with us. We're gonna have to catch up and do it again because I still feel like I have
Yeah.
more questions.
No problem. If you want to do it again, just let me know. I'm game.
Absolutely. And maybe what we'll do is at some point, because somehow this whole thing has turned into something crazy. And I've like started traveling and everything else. So maybe if I end up in Florida, I can catch up with you in person. We can sit down,
Right on.
have a little,
Right on.
have a little something happen there. So
Yeah.
I appreciate
Cool.
it, bud. And thank you very
No problem.
much. We're going to keep it moving. Ladies and gentlemen, that was
All right.
Jay.
Thanks. Have a good evening.
Have a good one, bud.
All right. Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Jay Meagher. Man, that is a guy that I just personally, I personally look up to, and just even talking to him and communicating with him, like you guys can see, and I'm not trying to blow it up or anything, but like you can see the man is very intelligent, and I think that's so cool because he's very thoughtful. He processes a lot of things. I also want to make note that Jay is an individual that at times has spoken with me off to the side and given me advice about stuff and given me advice about things, and I appreciate that because I understand the man who just sat here and talked about, he deleted a Facebook on off of his phone because he didn't want to be distracted, and he understood his time was valuable. To hear him say that, and then to also know that there have been times where I've reached out to him and he's had conversations with me, that's incredible. That dude is awesome. I'm gonna have to get him back on again. I feel like we went off course, but then I remembered that's the thing. This is the best part about Race Talk with Rice, and the best part of my job is that I get to talk to these individuals, and then like I remember things. Like I remembered watching that video of him flying to Dubai and building an LS motor over there, and that was just crazy because, like he said, that whole entire experience was just something else.